In today's video, I once again want to discuss the NHL trade deadline that just passed here on Monday afternoon. Except today I want to discuss 4 deals that came very, very close to happening, but obviously didn't, and how that could have changed the landscape of some of these teams and their fortunes heading into the playoffs should they have gone through. We'll discuss all that coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned, of course, we had all kinds of trade action to discuss here at the NHL Trade Deadline on Monday and even the days leading up to the deadline, but apparently there were some deals that were extremely close to happening, which could have changed things quite a bit and had players going to different teams, and there's also some players who did not end up getting moved, but were very, very close to being moved, which could have, again, changed the dynamic here for some of these other clubs trying to get some deals done. So now that the trade deadline's come and gone, of course, there's all kinds of reports coming out from different media sources indicating deals that were very close to happening, so let's jump in here. Now, the Vancouver Canucks were very close to trading Alex Edler. They did have some pretty decent offers from a variety of teams. I guess maybe I shouldn't say they were really close, but they certainly had some offers that they wanted to entertain, but they did go to Alex Edler, who has a full no-trade clause, and he was unwilling to move, so talks never really got too far, but there was multiple inquiries from a variety of teams, including the Calgary Flames, amongst other teams. I believe the Pittsburgh Penguins were involved in that as well, as we saw the Penguins kind of bulking up on the blue line a little bit heading into the playoffs. Edler is a guy who would have been a good fit there, as well as Calgary. Ultimately, he decided he did not want to leave Vancouver, did not want to waive his no trade, so he remains with the Canucks, and they are optimistic that they can come to terms on a contract extension for a few more years. I do think Alex Edler is a good fit to stay in Vancouver as well, with a lot of the young defensemen they have coming up through the system. He can be a good mentor there, and as long as he comes to terms on a reasonable contract, obviously he's getting a little bit older, but he can still play a fairly big role for them and log some fairly big minutes. So there was lots of interest in Alex Edler. Many calls were made to the Canucks, but no dice on him waiving his no trade. Now, speaking of no trade clauses, Wayne Simmonds, who ended up being traded to the Nashville Predators, does have a modified no trade, so there was a list of teams that he would not accept a trade to. Now, apparently the Winnipeg Jets thought they were getting Wayne Simmonds. They thought they had a deal in place with the Philadelphia Flyers to acquire the power forward. Of course, earlier that afternoon, the Jets had made a big acquisition acquiring Kevin Hayes, and they thought they were getting Wayne Simmonds too. They were very, very close to getting it done, but apparently what it came down to is that they were on the list of teams that Simmonds had on his no trade list, and he did not want to waive. Based on the conversations and trade discussions they had with the Flyers, they were under the impression that he likely would, so they had everything all ironed out, and they ended up getting rejected by Simmonds, who was obviously later traded to the Nashville Predators in exchange for Ryan Hartman in a draft pick. So obviously the Winnipeg Jets would have had no problem matching or beating that offer. But ultimately, Wayne Simmonds decided that going to Winnipeg was not something he wanted to do, and now he ends up in Nashville instead. Of course, he's a pending unrestricted free agent and has already said that he would certainly consider going back to Philadelphia in the offseason if they can work out a contract agreement in July. So we'll see what happens with Wayne Simmonds, but apparently he was very, very close to becoming a member of the Winnipeg Jets instead of the Nashville Predators. But thanks to that no trade clause, he controlled his destiny and ended up in Music City. We've seen one report as well indicating that the Oilers and the Leafs were very close to making a trade as well. It's being reported by Jimmy Murphy that the talks included Adam Larsson going to the Toronto Maple Leafs in exchange for Connor Brown, but many of the other reporters who cover the Oilers a little bit closer insist that it wasn't Larsson that was actually in the discussion, it was Benning. So either way, the Oilers and Leafs apparently were having some talks about sending a defenseman over to Toronto in exchange for Connor Brown. Now, as we know, with the situation in Toronto, they could certainly use some more help on the blue line. They do have a lot of contracts, discussions, and things that they need to look after this summer, and they will likely have some tough decisions to make, and they likely will have a slightly different team next year based on the fact that it will be challenging to keep everyone. And a guy like Connor Brown very well might find himself on the outs here and see himself moved. But ultimately, the trade talks didn't go far enough to get a deal done, but apparently talks were close. I'm not sure exactly what the stumbling point was or what changed somebody's mind from making this happen. Ultimately, though, I do think the Leafs might be able to do a little bit better than Matt Benning. There's certainly plenty of other defensemen out there that they could look to. Wouldn't be a complete shocker, though, to see the Oilers and Leafs hook up for a trade. The Oilers need some forwards with some skill and some speed. Toronto has plenty of that. And, of course, they could very well move a defenseman. I'm not sure Benning would be the best guy, but Either way, I can see those two teams having further discussions in the offseason and possibly, making a deal later on. But that's the speculation that a defenseman going from Edmonton to Toronto in exchange for Connor Brown came close, but no cigar, did not happen. One of the bigger trades of the day that was really close to happening as well was the Minnesota Wild and the Calgary Flames hooking up to send forward Jason Zucker to the Calgary Flames. Now, I don't know what the return was going the other way. I haven't found any reports indicating exactly what that was. However, the only thing that stopped us from being completing the deal was the logjam going into NHL Central Registry here that basically ran out of time and the clock beat out this deal getting completed with the league. So otherwise, this deal would have happened. And apparently we've been told that GM Brad Treliving of the Calgary Flames was white hot, really mad, really upset. We're not sure if he was mad at the league, mad at Minnesota for being late to file something. I'm not sure exactly where the breakdown happened, but the Calgary Flames really thought they were getting Jason Zucker from Minnesota, and that did not happen. Now, Zucker had signed a 5-year contract this past offseason, $5.5 million. Had a fantastic year last year. Certainly would have been a nice addition to the Calgary Flames. I can imagine that the Minnesota Wild were likely looking for some younger prospects in return. I mean, Calgary does have some pretty good-looking young defensemen. They've got a couple interesting younger forwards as well. So I'm not really sure what the return package would have been. Probably a combination of at least one good prospect, maybe a draft pick, and probably another more established player on their roster. But it's not quite clear. I haven't found any reports yet indicating what the return was. If you've seen any reports out there that I've missed, certainly leave a comment. Let me know what the return would be, or I guess maybe it might be a fun discussion point here. What do you think the return would be from Calgary to Minnesota to acquire Jason Zucker? And do you think Jason Zucker would have been a good fit with the Calgary Flames? Now, I guess one way to look at this for Calgary fans is James Neal was signed to a very similar type contract, to play a very similar type role. He's had a very tough season adjusting in Calgary. Hasn't been quite the fit that many thought, myself included, that he would be. I think a big part of that, though, is the fact that Elias Lindholm has been so good with Monahan and Gaudreau. When Neal was first signed, I really thought that was going to be his spot in the lineup on that top line. But they really just wanted to try Lindholm, and he's fit like a glove with those two, and they've had a phenomenal year as a line. All three of them putting up terrific point totals here. So obviously that leaves James Neal playing with some different players, and it just hasn't quite worked out. Now, he's been out injured. Obviously, he took a high stick to the face, lost a bunch of teeth. So when he comes back, obviously, maybe he'll be rejuvenated here, ready to go. During the offseason, when James Neal signed in Calgary, though, I couldn't help but wonder, Neal's been to the finals the past 2 seasons. Can he make it 3 in a row? And maybe being out injured for a while will help kind of get him rested up and ready to roll here for playoff time. And we'll see if he can come through with another strong playoff performance. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section on these trades that came very close to happening. And do you think they could kind of resume talks here in the offseason? Maybe we could see some of these deals go down at a later date. I know I could certainly see Calgary and Minnesota revisiting the Jason Zucker talks. I could certainly see Edmonton and Toronto revisiting the talks of a forward for a defenseman. I know that kind of makes sense as well. As far as Alex Edler goes, I do see him likely coming to terms with Vancouver and re-signing. So I think more likely trade talks there likely don't go anywhere, as he probably re-signs and stays in Vancouver. Either that or he could explore free agency, but either way, a trade doesn't really apply there anymore since he's on an expiring contract. And obviously, Wayne Simmonds is also a pending unrestricted free agent too, so it's hard to say where he'll sign. I don't see him going to Winnipeg, though, in the offseason, so I think that was their one shot that the Jets had to land him, and they're probably only interested in using him as a rental player as well. Like the Leafs and some of the other teams with lots of strong young players, the Winnipeg Jets are in a situation this summer where they're going to have some tough choices to make. They get some big-time RFAs that need big raises, and they're going to have a complicated time figuring it all out, deciding who they keep, and they might have to unload a player or two to kind of make some things work to keep what they decide to be their core moving forward. If you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Before you go, I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.